The battle for Africa. As we have seen in ancient Egypt, Greece and Rome, empires which have taken thousands of years to reach their peak of development can fall within a fraction of the time that it took to build them. In this section, we shall explore how the richest nations of the world that the world has ever seen can fall into chaos and poverty under tyrannical foreign powers and internal corruption. However, we shall also explore the fight for freedom, which took Africans from being enslaved in unimaginable conditions to fighting and earning their freedom by the sweat of their brow and their sheer determination to break the shackles of oppression. The start of the colonization or the decivilization or the undevelopment of Africa, we can start with Portuguese raids. In the year 1526, the Portuguese had completed their first raid for African slaves and transported them to Brazil in the Americas. Since Columbus ventured to America in 1492, Europeans had committed to one of the greatest atrocities in human history. The Native Americans were genocided and fell victim to foreign disease. Over 20 million Native Americans were killed. This is 95% of their population. Some estimates put this up to 55 million Native Americans who were genocided. This was compounded by the suspicious donation of blankets to the natives, which were riddled with smallpox from Europe. So essentially, the European leaders at the time campaigned to the public and said, donate your blankets because the Native Americans are freezing. A lot of the time they would be freezing because they've been pushed out of their land and having to go into lands which they otherwise would not go to. Now, if we put this into perspective, in medieval times, it was well known that if a city was under siege, if you were to take a rotting carcass and fling it over the walls of the castle, that carcass could then spread disease throughout the sieged establishment, the sieged castle or the sieged city. So I would hazard a guess that the Europeans knew exactly what they were doing when they sent their blankets riddled with smallpox to the Native Americans. The Native Americans had no immunity to smallpox and died as a result. Once again, estimates are between 20 to 55 million Native Americans. Even today, the Native Americans experience unparalleled levels of poverty, mental illness, and drug abuse. In 1454, Pope Nicholas granted King Alfonso V, quote, the rights of conquest and permissions previously granted not only to the territories already acquired, but also those that might be acquired in the future. Weighing all and singular the premises with due meditation, and noting that since we had formerly by other letters of are granted among things free and ample faculty to the aforesaid King Alfonso to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and other enemies of Christ wheresoever placed, and the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possessions, and all movable and immovable goods whatsoever held and possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedoms, counties, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his and their use and profit. This was written by a religious leader. In 1456, Pope Calixtus III confirmed these grants to the kings of Portugal, and they were renewed by Pope Sixtus IV in 1481, and finally in 1514 Pope Leo repeated verbatim all these documents and approved, renewed, and confirmed them. These papal bulls came to serve as a justification for the subsequent era of slave trade and European colonization. We have the religious leaders in Europe at the time telling the kings of Europe to go out and to ravage these lands and take what you will. It's mind-boggling. Despite the several papal condemnations of slavery in the 15th and 16th century, Spain and Portugal were never explicitly forbade from partaking in slavery. In 1488, Pope Innocent VIII accepted the gift of 100 slaves from Ferdinand II of Aragon and distributed those slaves to his cardinals and to Roman nobility. The curse of Ham, a biblical story which describes the descendants of Ham as a cursed people who were turned black by God, was later used to justify the enslavement of Africans. We have religious justification from Christendom to enslave this many people. My task to you is, we have seen that oppression of a people can lead to the regression of their culture and civilization. This can lead to poverty, crime, and mental illness. If a people's decline has been at little fault of their own, they had no control over the matter, and to the gain of others, i.e. that their disadvantage was another person's advantage or gain, who should be responsible for their progression out of their disadvantaged position? Is it the oppressed population's responsibility, or is it the oppressor's responsibility to take that person or take that group of people out of their disadvantage, or is it both of theirs? What I want you to do is put forth your argument. So what we've got here is, for example, we've got the Native Americans and the West African diaspora who have been heavily disadvantaged to the gain of Western Europe and to the current ethnic majority in America today. Is it the oppressed responsibility, or is it the oppressor's responsibility to take them out of that disadvantage? My second task for you is, during the Spanish Reconquista, which we have covered before, the Spanish Christians pushed the Spanish and the Moorish Muslims out of Spain. The Moors occupied Spain for over 600 years before they were removed. How do you think that the Christian Europeans may have viewed the West Africans, many of whom were Muslim at the time? So what I'm asking you is, this Spanish Reconquista, where there was a Christian movement in Spain to push Muslims out of Spain, did this frame their perception of Muslims as a whole? Did they therefore look at West African Muslims differently as a result? My last task to you is, the church supported slavery but later emerged as a force for anti-slavery. Do you think that religion may be a source of evil or good? Or do you think that human nature corrupts religion? So is it religion that has its flaws, or is it human nature that expresses its flaws through religion? Please explore, converse, take each task separately. Take your time, these are big questions, and whenever you're ready, we can continue with the presentation.